The midnight fay this story was submitted anonymously by someone who claims it happened to them in the fall of 2023. They've asked to remain nameless, and after hearing what they went through, I can't blame them. Driving for Uber can be a decent way to make some extra cash, but as this person found out, some ride can take you places you never want to go. My name's Jake, and I'm not the kind of guy who believes in ghosts or conspiracies. I'm just a regular dude, mid-20s, working a dead-end retail job, driving for Uber on the side to pay off student loans. I live in a mid-sized city in Ohio, not exactly a hotbed of crime, but not Mayberry either. Most of my rides were boring, drunk college kids, tired office workers, the occasional chatty grandma. Nothing out of the ordinary. That is, until the night I picked up him. It was late October, around 11:30 p.m. on a Thursday. The air was crisp, and the streets were quiet, with that eerie stillness you get when the world's gone to bed. I was about to call it a night when my Uber app pinged with a new request. The pickup was about 10 minutes away, at a gas station on the edge of town. The destination? Some rural address I didn't recognize, about 20 miles out. The payout was decent, $1.45 before tips. So I figured, why not? One last ride. Then I'd head home. I pulled into the gas station, a run-down place with flickering fluorescent lights and a single pump that looked like it hadn't been cleaned since the 90s. There was only one person there, standing near the entrance to the convenience store. He was tall, maybe 6 feet 3 inches, wearing a dark hoodie and jeans. His face was half hidden by the hood, but I could see he was pale, with a scruffy beard. He held a small duffel bag slung over one shoulder. I rolled down my window. "You the Uber for Michael?" I asked. He nodded, not saying a word, and climbed into the back seat. The door shut with a heavy thunk. I glanced at him in the rearview mirror, but he was already looking out the window, his face turned away. Some passengers are like that, quiet, antisocial, so I didn't think much of it. I confirmed the address on my app and started driving. "Gonna be about 25 minutes, I said, trying to fill the silence. "You live out there?" He didn't respond, just kept staring out the window. I caught a glimpse of his reflection in the glass, and for a split second, I thought his eyes looked off, like they were too dark, almost black. I shook it off as a trick of the light and turned up the radio, some low-key classic rock to ease the tension. The city faded behind us as we hit the highway, then turned onto a narrow 2-lane road flanked by cornfields and dense woods. The kind of place where your headlights barely cut through the darkness, and every rustle in the bushes makes you wonder what's out there. My GPS was acting glitchy, recalculating every few minutes, but I figured it was just bad reception. Rural Ohio is notorious for that. About 15 minutes in, Michael finally spoke. His voice was low, almost a growl, like he hadn't used it in days. "You ever see anything weird out here?" he asked. I glanced at him in the mirror. He was still looking out the window, but his posture had shifted, like he was leaning forward slightly. "Weird how?" I said, keeping my tone casual. He didn't answer right away. Then, slowly, he said, "Things that don't belong. Things that watch." A chill ran down my spine, but I laughed it off. "Man, you sound like you're auditioning for a horror movie." He didn't laugh, didn't even crack a smile, just kept staring out into the dark. I decided to shut up and focus on the road. The GPS said we were 5 miles from the destination, but the surroundings were getting stranger. The cornfields gave way to a stretch of barren land, dotted with gnarled trees that looked like they'd been dead for decades. No houses, no streetlights, just emptiness. That's when I noticed the smell. It was faint at first, like damp earth or rotting leaves, but it grew stronger, filling the car with a sickly, metallic tang. I checked my vents, thinking maybe something was coming through the AC, but they were clear. I glanced at Michael again, and this time he was looking right at me through the rearview mirror. His eyes were black, not just dark, but like voids, no whites, no pupils. I nearly swerved off the road. "Dude, you okay?" I asked, my voice cracking. He didn't blink, just stared. Then, in that same low growl, he said, "Stop the car." My heart was pounding, but I tried to stay calm. "We're almost there, man. Just a couple more miles." "Stop the car." His voice wasn't loud, but it carried this weight, like it wasn't a request. I hesitated, then pulled over onto the gravel shoulder. The car's engine hummed as I put it in park. Outside, the night was dead silent. No crickets, no wind, nothing. Just the kind of quiet that makes your ears ring. Michael didn't move at first. He just sat there, clutching his duffel bag. Then he reached into it and pulled something out. I couldn't see what it was at first, but the glint of metal caught my headlights. A knife. Not a pocket knife, but a long, serrated blade, the kind you'd use to gut a deer. "Get out," he said. I froze. My hands were shaking, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. "Look, man, I don't want any trouble. Just tell me what you want." He leaned forward, close enough that I could feel his breath on the back of my neck. It was cold, unnaturally cold, like air from a freezer. I said, "Get out." I don't know what possessed me, but I threw open my door and bolted. I ran into the woods, my sneakers crunching on dead leaves, branches snapping against my face. I didn't look back, didn't stop, just kept running until my lungs boned. I must have gone a quarter mile before I collapsed against a tree, gasping for air. That's when I realized my phone was still in the car. No way to call for help, no way to know where I was. I crouched low, trying to listen for footsteps or voices, but the woods were silent. Too silent, not even the rustle of leaves. It was like the world had gone mute. Then I heard it, a low, rhythmic sound, like chanting. It was faint, coming from deeper in the woods, but it was unmistakable. Words I couldn't make out, spoken in a language I didn't recognize. My skin crawled, and every instinct screamed at me to run. But where? I had no idea where I was, and going back to the car meant facing him. I stayed there, frozen, for what felt like hours. The chanting grew louder, then stopped abruptly. Silence again. I waited, counting my breaths, until I couldn't take it anymore. I started creeping back toward the road, moving as quietly as I could. When I reached the edge of the woods, I saw my car, still parked where I'd left it. The driver's door was open, the interior light casting a weak glow onto the gravel. Michael was gone. So was his duffel bag. But something was wrong. The car, it looked different. As I got closer, I saw why. The back seat was covered in date, like someone had dumped a shovelful of it there. And on the passenger seat was a single object, a small, carved wooden figure, about the size of a chess piece. It looked like a person, but the face was featureless, just a smooth, blank oval that I didn't touch it. I got in, slammed the door, and peeled out, driving as fast as I could back to civilization. The GPS was working again, like nothing had happened. When I got home, I locked every door, checked every window, and didn't sleep for 2 days. I reported the ride to Uber, but they said the account tied to Michael. Michael was, or what he wanted, but that wooden figure, it's still in my glove box. I can't bring myself to throw it out. Sometimes, late at night, I swear I hear that chanting again, faint, like it's coming from far away. And once, just once, I looked out my window and saw a tall figure standing at the edge of my yard, staring at my house. I don't drive at night anymore. Didn't exist anymore. No record of the fare, no trace of him. I quit driving for Uber after that. I don't know who, or what. The end story. The Uber driver at midnight. There's something about the quiet of the late hours, when the world feels like it's holding its breath, that makes me feel alive. But after what happened last summer, I don't think I'll ever take a late-night Uber again. This is a story I've kept to myself for a while, mostly because I'm still trying to make sense of it. It's not the kind of thing you casually bring up at chai stalls or family dinners. But every time I close my eyes, I'm back in that car, and I can still hear his voice. It was August 2024, and I was in the hall for a cousin's wedding. The city was buzzing with monsoon, humidity, and the chaos of wedding season. I'd been crashing at my cousin Allah's place in Goldberg, helping with last-minute errands. The wedding was a big deal, 3 days of non-stop events, from Mundee to the Valama. By the third day, I was exhausted. My phone was dying. My curtain was sticking to my skin, and all I wanted was to get back to Allah's apartment, and crashed at IT was around 1 a.m. when the Valama wrapped up. The venue was in a quieter part of the city, near Model Town, and most of the guests had already left. Ali was staying behind to handle some family drama, so I decided to book an Uber. The app showed a driver named Harun, driving a black Toyota Corolla, 5 minutes away. His profile had a blurry picture of a guy with a beard, a 4.8 rating, and a few generic reviews like good driver and on time. Nothing out of the ordinary. I confirmed the ride and waited by the road, the humid air thick with the smell of jasmine and diesel. The street was eerily quiet, save for the occasional bark of a stray dog or the hum of a motorbike in the distance. The streetlights flickered, casting long shadows on the cracked pavement. I checked my phone, 2% battery. Great! Just as I was about to text Ali, a pair of headlights rounded the corner. A black Corolla pulled up, and the window rolled down. USM. A deep voice called out. Yeah, that's me. I said, slinging my backpack over my shoulder and hopping into the back seat. The car smelled faintly of cigarette smoke and something sweeter, like atto or incense. The driver, Harun, didn't turn around. I could only see the back of his head, short, messy hair and a stiff posture. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, like he was bracing for something. Goldberg, right? He asked, his voice low and gravelly, like he hadn't spoken in hours. Yep. I replied, settling in. The car's interior was clean but worn. Cracked leather seats, a dangling air freshener shaped like a crescent moon, and a small Koran on the dashboard. The radio was off, which was unusual for an Uber in Lahore. Most drivers blast Qawwali or Bollywood tracks to keep themselves awake. But Harun was silent, and so was the car that we pulled onto the main road, and I leaned back, scrolling through my phone until the screen went black. Dead. I sighed and glanced out the window. The city looked different at this hour, empty, almost ghostly. The streetlights seemed dimmer, and the shadows between them fell heavier. I tried to make small talk to break the silence. Late night for you too, huh? I said, forcing a chuckle. Harun didn't respond right away. He tilted his head slightly, like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. After a long pause, he said, nights are always long for me. Okay, cryptic, I thought. Maybe he was just tired. I didn't push it. But as we drove, I noticed something odd. The route on the Uber app had shown a straight shot to Goldberg, maybe 15 minutes tops. But Harun was taking side streets, weaving through narrow alleys I didn't recognize. The buildings around us were old, with peeling paint and shuttered shops. No people, no cars, just us. Is this a shortcut? I asked, leaning forward till Harun's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. For the first time, I saw his face, or part of it. His eyes were dark, almost too dark, like they didn't reflect the light. Yeah, he said. Shortcut. Traffic's bad on the main road. I frowned. At 1 a.m., there was no traffic, but I didn't argue. Maybe he knew something I didn't. Still, my gut was starting to churn. I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was just tired and paranoid. Weddings do that to you. Too much noise, too many people, not enough sleep thought we turned into another alley, this one even narrower. The streetlights were gone now, and the only light came from the car's headlights. The buildings on either side seemed to lean in, their windows dark and lifeless. I shifted in my seat, trying to get a better look at where we were. That's when I noticed the street signs. They were in Urdu, but the names were unfamiliar. Gully Korf, Mohalisio. Fear Street? Shadow Neighborhood? I'd lived in Lahore on and off for years, and I'd never heard of these places. BH by, I said, my voice catching. Where are we? This doesn't look like Goldberg. Harun didn't answer. His hands tightened on the wheel, and the car slowed to a crawl. My heart started pounding. I reached for my phone, forgetting it was dead. Panic crept in. I was alone in a car with a stranger, in a part of the city I didn't recognize, and no way to call for help. Harun, stop the car, I said, trying to sound firm. I want to get out. He didn't stop. Instead, he spoke, his voice calm but heavy, like he was reciting something. You ever wonder what happens to people who disappear in this city? My blood ran cold. What? People get in cars, he continued, ignoring me. They trust the driver, the app, the system. And then, poof, gone. No trace. No story. I grabbed the door handle and yanked it. Locked. My breathing quickened. Let me out, man. Now. Haroon chuckled, a low, guttural sound that made my skin crawl. Relax, Asim. We're almost there. Almost where? I snapped, banging on the window. This isn't Goldberg. He didn't answer. The car turned again, and we pulled into what looked like an abandoned lot. The headlights illuminated a crumbling building ahead, its walls covered in graffiti and vines. It looked like an old Haveli, the kind you'd see in horror movies, with broken windows and a sagging roof. My stomach dropped. Haroon stopped the car but didn't turn off the engine. He finally turned to face me, and I wish he hadn't. His face was wrong. The beard from his profile picture was there, but his skin was pale, almost gray, and his eyes were sunken, like he hadn't slept in years. He smiled, but it wasn't friendly. It was a kind of smile that made you want to run. "You're not the first," he said, "and you won't be the last." I don't know what came over me, fear, adrenaline, or just survival instinct, but I lunged to the door again, slamming my shoulder against it. To my surprise, it popped open. I stumbled out, falling onto the gravel. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and something metallic, like blood. I scrambled to my feet and ran, not looking back. The lot was surrounded by a rusted fence, but there was a gap just wide enough for me to squeeze through. I could hear the car's engine behind me, idling, like Haroon was watching, waiting. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it had burst. I ran through the dark, tripping over roots and debris, until I hit a main road. It was deserted, but I kept running, my lungs burning, until I saw the glow of a petrol station in the distance that I burst through the doors, gasping, and begged the cashier to let. The driver's name will confuse the app with another service. Yeah, right. Ali and I drove back to the area where I'd escaped, hoping to find the lot of the Haveli. But the streets didn't match up. The alleys I remembered, Goliikov, Mohalisoyo, didn't exist on any map. We asked locals, shopkeepers, even a traffic cop, but no one had heard of those places. The petrol station cashier, below, was the only one who didn't think I was crazy. He said he'd heard stories about ghost drivers in Lahore, Uber drivers who pick up passengers and take them to places that don't exist. Urban legend stuff. I laughed it off, but deep down, I wasn't so sure that a few days later, I was scrolling through X, trying to distract myself, when I stumbled across a thread in a local Lahore group. Someone had posted about a missing cousin who'd taken an Uber late at night and never made it home. The replies were chilling. People shared similar stories, friends or family who'd gotten into rideshare cars and vanished. One user mentioned a driver named Haroon who'd creeped them out but didn't elaborate. I DM'd them, but they never replied that I don't know what happened that night. Maybe Haroon was just a weirdo with a sick sense of humor. Maybe I imagined the street signs or misread them in my panic. But I can't explain the way his face looked in that rearview mirror, or why the Uber app erased all traces of the ride. I've stopped taking Ubers after dark, and I keep my phone charged at all times now. Lahore's a big city, full of stories. Some you can explain, some you can't. And some, like mine, you just try to forget. But every time I pass a black Corolla on the road, I feel those eyes on me again. And I wonder if Haroon's still out there, driving through alleys that don't exist, waiting for his next million questions. But I just told him I didn't want to talk about it. When we got back to his place, I plugged in my phone and checked the Uber app. The ride was marked as canceled. No record of Haroon, no trip history, nothing. It was like it never happened. The next day, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I told Ali the whole story, and he looked at me like I'd lost it. "You sure you weren't just drunk, bro?" he said, half joking. But he agreed to help me dig into it. We searched for Haroon's profile on Uber, but it was gone. No driver named Haroon, no black Corolla with his plates. I even called Uber support, but they said there was no record of my ride. They suggested I'd mistyped me use his phone. He looked at me like I was crazy, but handed it over. I called Ali, told him to come get me, and collapsed onto the floor, shaking. The cashier, a wiry guy named Below, gave me a glass of water and asked what happened. I told him the bare minimum, just that my Uber driver was a creep and I'd ditched the car. I didn't mention the alley names or Haroon's face. I wasn't ready to sound insane. Ali showed up 20 minutes later, and I climbed into his car, still trembling. He asked end story.